Hello and welcome to my third video blog of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Wow, so I'm really liking this book. It's one of the best books I've read. The writing is incredible and the character development is just really great. I'm really seriously enjoying this book. In this episode I'm going to be talking about Chief. Besides the small initial character analysis I did in the first video, I haven't really talked about Chief that much, and seeing as he's the narrator and I'm assuming the protagonist, this little analysis doesn't really do his character progression justice. I have finished the first part of the book, so this section will not only be the last section I read, but the entire first part and on how Chief Bromden's character has been developed thus far. He went from being a boy in an Indian tribe threatened by the white man to a high school football player to a soldier in World War II to a patient in the mental ward, the last of which he has been for about 20 years. Each glimpse at his past shows the slow decline that he takes from being a strong character to being the weak, suspicious character we see now. He often thinks back to his boyhood and the times with the tribe, from the whoop of Charlie Bearbelly to going hunting with his father, like I mentioned in the first video. He greatly admires his father, seeing him as a strong, lively man and his greatest idol. He compares McMurphy to him a few times with his strong spirit and dynamic personality. This is why the destruction of his little tribe by the U.S. Department of the Interior and the loss of his father to alcohol really hit him so hard. He lost his life and his hero. Then came the war. Maybe he was drafted or he willingly chose to join the ranks, but either way, the horrific events that he saw in the war still affect him 20 years later. He had thought that after all this time he would have stopped thinking and worrying about the war, but he hasn't. The shock of the war still has a hold on him. These awful events have greatly weakened Bromden mentally, and he believes physically as well. When he talks about his high school days, he states, "I was a whole lot bigger in those days." Even though he probably hasn't literally shrunk in size, he feels like he is less of a man than he was in high school. The strength that he had inherited from his father is gone, and it's been replaced by fear and suspicion. Chief protects himself from this fear by hiding in this strange fog that he sees seeping through the ventilation systems in the ward. In the first video I was really confused about this because I thought there was literal fog coming through the ventilation system, that Nurse Ratched was turning on a fog machine and pumping fog into the ward, like Bromden thinks she is. However, by the end of the first part, it's pretty obvious that this fog is a hallucination that echoes the same fog that the generals in the war would turn on so that the enemies couldn't see what they were doing on the battlefield. So Chief Bromden experienced this fog while he was in the war. When he first got into the ward, this imaginary fog that was everywhere was really scary to him because he was afraid that he was going to get lost into it and be alone forever. However, after all these years, he's slowly giving into this figurative fog, losing himself in it as a way to protect himself from the pains of his life. Bromden believes that all of the patients can see and are affected by the fog, but they just decide not to acknowledge that it's there. For the vegetables, the fog is something that they've given into. They've completely checked out of life and stay in the fog permanently. But for the acutes, it means more of an attitude of submission to the big nurse as a way of protecting themselves from her wrath. The one person this fog doesn't seem to be affecting is McMurphy. The moment he stepped on the ward, changes started happening in Bromden and the other patients. He's the only one that seems to see through Chief's feigned deafness, and he encourages the other patients to speak out against Ratched's regime. Chief sees McMurphy's attempts at making the other patients speak and act out against the Combine as him attempting to pull them out of the safety of the fog. Of course, they're all really reluctant to do so. They've been stuck in this fog for a long time, Chief most of all. However, in the last section of the first part, we see McMurphy inspiring the other patients to vote out against Nurse Ratched. And when he does so, Chief says he sees McMurphy physically pulling the patients out of the fog. Chief fails to vote at first, being so deep in his own personal fog, it's thicker than it's ever been before. So McMurphy does lose the vote. However, he does vote later after the vote is closed by Nurse Ratched, and he says McMurphy was the one who pulled him out of the fog and made him raise his hand. But then he corrects himself, saying, no, it wasn't McMurphy who pulled him out of the fog. it was himself. By the end of the first part, we are beginning to see the progression of Chief as a character. I believe that throughout the novel, Chief is going to start getting stronger and feel more like his old self, like he is bigger, like he was before, like his father. And he might even go so far as to speak out against Nurse Ratched. In the end, I think he will have regained his strength, physically, mentally, and socially. Thanks for watching.